I never expected my life to implode on a random Tuesday afternoon. But there I was, staring at my sister-in-law Vanessa on my doorstep, her 2 kids hanging off her like Christmas ornaments, and enough luggage to suggest this wasn't just a casual visit. My name is Rachel, and until that moment I'd managed to maintain a careful balance between my marriage and my sanity. Working as an assistant editor-in-chief meant I needed my home to be my sanctuary, a quiet place where I could decompress after wrestling with deadlines and demanding authors all day. "Surprise!" Vanessa chirped, her perfectly glossed lips curved into what I'd come to recognize as her "I need something" smile. "The kids and I thought we'd come for a little visit." Before I could process what was happening, her son Oliver darted past me into the house, his sister Chloe following close behind. The sound of something crashing in my living room made me wince. "Oh, don't worry about that," Vanessa waved dismissively. "Kids will be kids, right?" I stood frozen in the doorway as she wheeled in 2 massive suitcases, followed by what looked like a portable wardrobe. "How long exactly are you planning to stay?" "Just until things settle down," she said vaguely, already making herself at home. "Ethan didn't tell you?" I could have sworn he said he'd handle it. "My husband." Of course. Speaking of the devil, Ethan chose that moment to come home early from work, something he never did. His face lit up at the sight of his sister, and they embraced like they hadn't seen each other in years rather than the 3 weeks since our last forced family dinner. "You made it!" he exclaimed, helping bring in more bags. "Rachel, isn't this great? The house will finally feel alive." I caught the slight emphasis on finally and felt my stomach twist. Our house was plenty alive, with conversation, laughter, and the occasional heated debate about comma placement. Just because we didn't have children running around breaking things didn't mean we were living in a mausoleum. "Ethan," I said carefully, "can we talk for a minute?" He followed me to the kitchen, still beaming. I could hear Oliver and Chloe thundering up and down the stairs, probably marking their territory like overwrought puppies. "When were you planning to tell me about this?" "I knew you'd overthink it if I told you in advance," he said, reaching for the coffee maker. "It's just temporary. Vanessa's going through some stuff with her ex, and she needs a safe place for the kids. And our home was volunteered without any discussion? They're family, Rachel. We have 3 empty bedrooms collecting dust. What's the big deal?" Before I could respond, there was another crash upstairs, followed by giggling and what sounded suspiciously like water running. "I should check on that," Ethan said, already turning away. "Try to relax, okay? This'll be good for us." I watched him bound up the stairs, leaving me alone in my rapidly shrinking kitchen. My phone buzzed, a text from my best friend Lila. "Still on for wine night tomorrow?" I was about to reply when Vanessa swooped in, phone in hand. "Oh, Rachel, I hope you don't mind, but I invited Mom and Dad to come stay too. They're worried about the kids adjusting, and you know how Mom gets. They'll be here Thursday." She disappeared before I could respond, her voice carrying down the hallway as she coordinated with my in-laws. I gripped the kitchen counter, my knuckles white, as the reality of my situation sank in. My peaceful home was being invaded, my husband had conspired behind my back, and my mother-in-law, who'd once suggested I was too career-focused to be a proper wife, was arriving in 2 days. I picked up my phone and typed a quick response to Lila. "Make it a bottle. Maybe 2. We need to talk." Above me, something that sounded expensive shattered, followed by Ethan's laughter and his sister's theatrical apologies. But it was the sight of Vanessa's divorce papers, partially visible in her open purse on my counter, that made my blood run cold. This wasn't going to be temporary at all. The first 48 hours with my uninvited house guests felt like being trapped in a reality show I never auditioned for. I'd retreated to my home office, the only space still untouched by Hurricane Vanessa, when the smell of burning jolted me from my work. I rushed to the kitchen to find Oliver attempting to make grilled cheese with the burner on high, while Vanessa lounged on the couch, scrolling through her phone. "Oliver, step back," I said, quickly moving the smoking pan. "Where's your mom?" "Right here," Vanessa called out, not looking up. He's fine. He makes his own lunch all the time at home. Charred remains of what was once my favorite non-stick pan told a different story. I bit back a response, remembering my grandmother's advice about choosing battles wisely. Instead, I made Oliver a proper sandwich, trying not to notice how he wolfed it down like he hadn't eaten all day. "Hey, while you're in there," Vanessa piped up, "could you make me something too? I'm starving." Before I could respond, Ethan burst through the door carrying shopping bags. "Family dinner tonight," he announced. "Mom and Dad are coming early." Surprise! My stomach dropped. Early? They weren't supposed to be here until tomorrow. "Mom couldn't wait," he grinned, unpacking groceries. "And wait till you hear the best part. They're bringing Aunt Susan and Uncle Mike too." I watched as he and Vanessa high-fived like teenagers planning a party. Kitchen counter disappeared under ingredients as Ethan pulled out recipe after recipe. "Honey," I said carefully, "I have that big manuscript deadline tomorrow. Remember." "Come on, Rachel," Vanessa interjected, finally looking up from her phone. "Family comes first. You can do your little editing thing anytime." I caught Ethan nodding along with his sister and felt something crack inside me. My little editing thing pays half the mortgage on this house. "Speaking of the house," Vanessa said, her tone suddenly serious, "Mom mentioned you two might be thinking of moving to a bigger place. You know, something more family-friendly." The look that flashed across Ethan's face told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't just another one of Vanessa's random comments, they'd been discussing our future without me. "I need some air," I managed, heading for the door. Ethan caught my arm. "Where are you going?" "My parents will be here in an hour. Then I'll be back in 59 minutes. I drove to Lila's house on autopilot, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. She took one look at me and poured 2 glasses of wine. "They're planning to stay permanently, aren't they?" she asked after I'd spilled everything. "Worse," I said. "I think Ethan's been planning this with them. He's never home early, never cooks, never arranges family gatherings. But suddenly he's super host. Have you checked your joint account lately?" I froze with my wine glass halfway to my lips. "Why?" "Just a hunch," Lila said carefully. "But moving to a family-friendly house takes money." I pulled out my phone, logged into our banking app, and felt the blood drain from my face. There had been several large transfers to a savings account I didn't recognize, all in the past month. "I have to go," I said, standing up so quickly I almost knocked over my wine. When I got home, the house was already full of people. Geraldine had taken over my kitchen, rearranging everything to her liking. Harold sat in my reading chair, while Vanessa's kids ran circles around the dining room table. Aunt Susan was critiquing my choice of curtains. But it was the conversation I overheard between Ethan and Vanessa in the hallway that stopped me cold. "Did you get Rachel to sign those papers yet?" Vanessa whispered. "Not yet," Ethan replied. "But Mom says once the house transfer is done, it won't matter. Rachel will have to adjust or..." He trailed off as I rounded the corner, his face freezing in that deer-in-headlights look I'd never seen before. Behind him, Vanessa smirked. "Perfect timing," she said. "Mom's just about to serve dinner. Hope you don't mind, but we had to throw out some of your old dishes to make room for hers. They were a bit dated." I smiled, a plan already forming in my mind. "No problem at all. What's family for, right?" I spent the next morning in my office, not editing manuscripts but digging through our financial records. Each discovery felt like another nail in my marriage's coffin. The papers Vanessa mentioned weren't just about a house transfer. Ethan had been systematically moving our assets around for months. My phone buzzed with another text from him. "Mom's making her famous pot roast tonight. Don't work too late." I ignored it, focusing instead on the email from our bank. The joint account I'd contributed to for years had been quietly drained, with regular transfers to an account in his name only. The final transfer had happened just days before Vanessa's arrival. A knock at my office door made me jump. It was Oliver, clutching a tablet. Aunt Rachel? Mom says I need your work password for the Wi-Fi. I blinked. The guest network password is on the fridge. No, she says she needs the other one. The one for your work computer. Of course she did. I was about to refuse when I heard Vanessa's voice from the hallway. Just let him use your laptop, Rachel. Don't be difficult. I turned to find her leaning against the doorframe, that familiar smirk playing on her lips. Behind her, I could see moving boxes stacked in the hallway, boxes I hadn't noticed before. Those are new, I said carefully. Oh, those? Vanessa waved dismissively. Just some things Mom thought would look better in here. Your stuff is in the garage. My grandmother's antique mirror. My books. My life. Where's Ethan? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Meeting with the lawyer, she replied, then quickly added, about my divorce, of course. But her slight hesitation told me everything. I stood up, closing my laptop. Tell your mother I won't be home for dinner. Again? Vanessa sighed dramatically. You know, Ethan always said you were difficult about family stuff, but I didn't want to believe it. The poor guy, always having to choose between his wife and his family. I walked past her down the stairs, my mind racing. In the kitchen, Geraldine was replacing my coffee maker with her own ancient model. Oh, good, you're here, she said without looking up. Sign these consent forms for the school. We're enrolling the children next week. I picked up the papers. They weren't school forms, they were property transfer documents already bearing Ethan's signature. Where did you get these? Ethan left them for you, she replied smoothly. It's just a formality, dear. You know how these things work. But I did know how these things worked. 5 years as an editor had taught me to read the fine print. These papers would sign away my rights to the house I'd helped pay for, the house I'd helped renovate. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Lila. Did you check the safety deposit box? The safety deposit box. The one where I kept my grandmother's jewelry, my emergency fund, and most importantly, the original deed to the house, the one showing my name as co-owner. I grabbed my keys, but Vanessa stepped in front of the door. Where are you going? Mom's already starting dinner. Move, I said quietly. You know, she said, not budging, Ethan was right. You really don't understand what family means. No, Vanessa. You don't understand what you've done. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd saved earlier that morning. Hello, Detective Martinez? Remember that fraud case we discussed? I'd like to move forward with the investigation. Color drained from Vanessa's face. Behind her, Geraldine dropped a plate. You wouldn't, Vanessa whispered. We're family. I smiled, feeling strangely calm. You're right. Family should look out for each other. That's why I've been recording everything since that interesting conversation I overheard last night. As if on cue, my phone pinged with an email from my lawyer, confirming receipt of all the documentation I'd sent over that morning. Now, I said, I believe you're in my way. The safety deposit box was empty. I stood in the bank vault, staring at the void where my grandmother's jewelry and emergency fund should have been. The bank manager shuffled uncomfortably behind me. The access records show your husband visited last week, he said. With proper authorization, of course. Of course. My signature, perfectly forged on the access form, stared back at me. 5 years of marriage, and I never knew Ethan could replicate my handwriting. My phone buzzed, Lila again. Rachel, where are you? Ethan's looking for you everywhere. Says it's urgent. I bet he did. I texted back. Meet me at Carlo's. Bring your laptop. Carlo's was our code for serious trouble. The little cafe had been my sanctuary during the worst times after my parents' death, and Lila knew what it meant if I wanted to meet there. When I arrived, she already had 2 coffees waiting. How bad? Everything's gone, I said, my voice hollow. The deed, the jewelry, the money, all of it. That's impossible, she frowned, opening her laptop. The deed is registered with the county. Even if he took the physical copy. She trailed off, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Then she turned the screen toward me. Rachel, when did you sign this? I stared at the document. It was a transfer of deed dated 3 months ago with my signature at the bottom. Except I hadn't signed anything 3 months ago. He's been planning this since before Vanessa showed up, I whispered. There's more, Lila said quietly. Check your email. The message was from my publishing house's HR department. Someone had requested my employment records, again with my forged signature. They were building a paper trail documenting every aspect of my life they could control. My phone rang, Ethan. I let it go to voicemail. You need a lawyer, Lila said. Now. I need more than that, I replied, pulling out my own laptop. I need proof. We spent the next hour documenting everything. Bank transfers, forged signatures, suspicious timing. With each discovery, the weight in my chest grew heavier. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Oliver. Aunt Rachel, where are you? Mom's crying and Grandma says it's your fault. Before I could respond, another message came through, a photo from Vanessa. Showed my home office, completely transformed into a children's bedroom. My books were gone, my desk replaced with bunk beds. The kids love their new room, the caption read. Family dinner at 6. Don't be late. They're trying to erase me, I said, my voice cracking. Piece by piece, they're writing me out of my own life. Lila reached across the table and grabbed my hand. No, they're showing you exactly who they are. The question is, what are you going to do about it? My phone rang again. This time it was Harold, my father-in-law. I almost declined the call, but something made me answer. Rachel, he said quietly, I know what they're doing. Meet me at the park in 20 minutes. Come alone. I looked at Lila, who was already packing up her laptop. Go, she said. I'll have my phone ready if you need backup. Park was empty except for Harold, sitting on our usual bench. He looked older somehow, tired. I tried to stop them, he said as I sat down. But Geraldine, she's convinced this is what's best for everyone. Best for everyone? I echoed. They're stealing my life. No, he replied, pulling an envelope from his jacket. They're trying to steal your future. But they forgot about the past. Inside the envelope was a letter written in my grandmother's handwriting, dated just before she died. A letter I'd never seen before, addressed to my future self. How did you get this? Geraldine took it from your office, he said. She was going to destroy it, but I couldn't let that happen. Your grandmother. She knew something like this might happen. Read it. As I opened the letter, Harold stood up. Whatever you decide to do, Rachel, know that not all family is bound by blood. Sometimes the strongest bonds are the ones we choose for ourselves. He walked away, leaving me alone with my grandmother's last words and a decision that would change everything. My grandmother's letter changed everything. I sat in my car outside the house, reading it for the 3rd time. Her words about protecting what's yours, not just possessions but your dignity, your self-worth, hit harder now than they would have 5 years ago. The front door opened and Ethan stepped out, phone pressed to his ear. I don't care what it takes, he was saying. Just make sure those accounts are locked down by morning. I watched him pace the driveway, this stranger wearing my husband's face. Through the living room window, I could see Vanessa directing movers, pointing at my remaining furniture. Geraldine stood in the kitchen, probably planning another family dinner I wouldn't attend. My phone buzzed, a text from Oliver. Mom says you're being selfish. Are you coming home? Home. The word felt hollow now. I stepped out of the car just as Ethan ended his call. His face flickered between relief and something darker when he saw me. Where have you been? He demanded. Mom's worried sick. Is she? I walked past him toward the house. Or is she worried about what I might do? He grabbed my arm. Rachel, don't start. The family's finally coming together. Why can't you just let go of me? My voice was quiet but firm. Now. Something in my tone made him release me. Inside, Vanessa was instructing the movers to take my grandmother's antique writing desk. Stop, I said. Oh, look who finally showed up, Vanessa smirked. We're just making room for the kids' study area. They need it more than you do. That desk isn't yours to give away. Actually, Ethan cut in, according to the new deed. The forged deed. I turned to face him. The one you had someone copy my signature on? The movers paused, looking uncertain. Geraldine emerged from the kitchen, her face tight with concern. Rachel, dear, she started, you're clearly upset. Clearly, I agreed, pulling out my phone. Just like the bank manager was clearly upset when I showed him the forged authorization forms. And my publishing house's legal team was clearly upset about the fraudulent records requests. Color drained from Ethan's face. You're bluffing. I played the recording from earlier, his phone conversation about locking down accounts. Then I showed them the email from my lawyer, confirming the fraud investigation was proceeding. Get out, Vanessa hissed. You ungrateful. No, I cut her off. You get out. All of you. You have 1 hour. This is my house, Ethan said, but his voice wavered. Check your phone, I replied. On cue, his phone buzzed with a notification. I watched as he read the emergency injunction my lawyer had just filed, freezing all assets and preventing any further property transfers. You can't do this, Geraldine protested. We're family. Family? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my ears. Family doesn't forge signatures. Family doesn't steal inheritances. Family doesn't try to erase someone from their own life. Oliver appeared at the top of the stairs, Chloe behind him. Mom? What's happening? Vanessa rushed to shield them as if I were the threat. Nothing, sweetie. Your Aunt Rachel is just being dramatic. No, I said, looking directly at the kids. Your Aunt Rachel is finally standing up for herself. Something your mother should have taught you about. I turned to the movers. Put everything back exactly where you found it. I'll pay you double. They nodded, already reversing course. Finn stepped toward me, his charm sliding back into place. Honey, let's talk about this. The police will be here in 20 minutes, I interrupted. They're very interested in those forged documents. Your choice if you want to be here when they arrive. The next 15 minutes were chaos, Vanessa screaming, Geraldine crying, Harold watching silently from the corner. But they left, taking their belongings with them. As Ethan walked out last, he turned back. You'll regret this. I thought of my grandmother's letter, of her words about standing your ground. No, I said. For the first time in years, I don't regret anything. I closed the door on my old life and locked it. 3 days after I kicked them out, I came home to find my front door unlocked and music spilling from inside. For a moment, I thought I'd walked into the wrong house. Every surface was covered in flowers and decorations, and the air smelled of Geraldine's signature pot roast. A party was in full swing in my living room. My in-laws' entire social circle milled about, drinking wine from my grandmother's crystal glasses. Vanessa held court near the fireplace, while Oliver and Chloe ran through the crowd with plates of cake. Rachel! Ethan appeared at my side, all smiles and charm. You're just in time for the announcement. What announcement? My voice sounded distant over the buzzing in my ears. About the house, of course. Geraldine stepped forward, clinking her glass for attention. Everyone gather round. Crowd quieted, and I noticed several faces I recognized, neighbors, colleagues from Ethan's firm, even a few of my own co-workers. All watching, all waiting. As you know, Geraldine continued, this lovely home has been in our family for generations. That was the first lie. I'd bought it with my inheritance from my grandmother. And now, thanks to Ethan's wonderful planning, it will continue to be a true family home, with Vanessa and her children moving in permanently. Applause erupted. Someone pressed a glass of champagne into my hand. Through the crowd, I caught Harold's eye. He looked away quickly, shame written across his face. "The papers are all signed," Ethan whispered in my ear. "You might have frozen some accounts, but you forgot about the power of attorney you gave me last year when you were in the hospital. Everything's legal now." The champagne glass slipped from my fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. The noise drew Oliver's attention, and he ran over. "Aunt Rachel, Mom says we're keeping your office as our playroom. Can we paint it?" Vanessa appeared behind him, victory gleaming in her eyes. "Of course you can, sweetie. It's your room now." I looked around at my home, my grandmother's antiques replaced with modern furniture, family photos replaced with portraits of Vanessa's children. My books nowhere in sight. "Where are my things?" My voice cracked. "In storage," Ethan said smoothly. "We'll sort through them later." Now smile, people are watching. They were. Every eye in the room seemed fixed on me, waiting for my reaction. This was their plan: back me into a corner, surround me with witnesses, force me to accept their version of events or look like the unreasonable one. My phone buzzed. A text from Lila. "Got the evidence. Police are on their way. Hold on." But before I could respond, Geraldine clinked her glass again. "And one more announcement. Ethan, would you like to share the wonderful news?" He stepped forward, that familiar, charming smile in place. "Rachel and I have decided to take a break. She'll be staying with friends while we sort things out. It's all very amicable." The room filled with sympathetic murmurs. I saw my coworkers exchange glances, probably remembering all the times I defended Ethan's behavior. "That's not true," I said, but my voice was lost in the noise. Vanessa stepped closer, speaking low enough that only I could hear. "Face it, Rachel. You lost. The house is ours legally. Your precious grandmother's things are gone. Even your colleagues think you're having a breakdown. Just walk away while you still have some dignity." I felt the walls closing in, the room spinning. Everything I'd built, everything I'd protected was being stripped away in front of an audience. Then I saw Oliver picking up one of my grandmother's crystal glasses, preparing to throw it to his sister. "Catch, Chloe." The glass arced through the air in slow motion. In that moment, I had a choice: let it shatter like everything else in my life, or finally take control. I caught the glass inches from the floor. "Actually," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room, "I have an announcement of my own." The front door burst open, and Detective Martinez stepped in, followed by 2 uniformed officers. "Perfect timing," I said, meeting Ethan's shocked gaze. "Let's talk about fraud, forgery, and family, shall we?" The aftermath of the party felt like watching dominoes fall in slow motion. Detective Martinez methodically collected statements while party guests fled, leaving behind half-empty glasses and whispered apologies. Ethan sat on my couch, his head in his hands, while Vanessa paced frantically, phone pressed to her ear. "Your lawyer's not picking up," she snapped at Ethan. "Fix this." I stood by my grandmother's writing desk, now back in its rightful place, as Detective Martinez laid out the evidence: forged signatures, fraudulent bank transfers, and the smoking gun emails between Ethan and a document forger, discussing payment for delicate family matters. "This is ridiculous," Geraldine interrupted. "We're protecting family assets. Rachel never understood what family means." "Family?" Harold's voice cut through the room. We all turned to see him standing in the doorway, holding a familiar wooden box. "Is this what family means?" He opened the box, revealing my grandmother's jewelry, the pieces Ethan claimed were in storage. "I found this hidden in Vanessa's guest room." "Dad," Ethan started, but Harold held up his hand. "No more lies." He placed the box on the desk beside me. "I've watched this family destroy everything good in the name of protection and togetherness. I won't stay silent anymore." Vanessa lunged for the box. "Those are mine now. The house transfer is void," Detective Martinez interjected. along with every other document Mr. Walker forged. Speaking of which, she nodded to an officer who stepped forward with handcuffs. You can't be serious, Ethan laughed, but the sound was hollow. Rachel, tell them this is just a misunderstanding. I picked up my grandmother's sapphire ring, the one she'd promised would be my something blue at my wedding. You know what I don't understand, Ethan? How you could sleep beside me every night while plotting to steal my home. I didn't steal anything. I was protecting our future. Your future, I corrected. With your perfect family picture. Your sister in my office, your mother in my kitchen, your name on my grandmother's house. Everything I did for us. No, I said quietly. Everything you did to me. The officer stepped forward again, but Ethan backed away. You're making a mistake. Vanessa, tell them about the agreement. Mom, show them the papers. But Vanessa was already edging toward the door, her survival instincts kicking in. Geraldine stood frozen, her carefully constructed world crumbling. Mr. Walker, Detective Martinez said firmly, we can do this here or at the station. Your choice. Ethan's charm cracked completely. This is your fault, he shouted at me. I gave you everything, a family, a purpose. You were nothing before us. Wrong again, I replied, slipping my grandmother's ring onto my finger. I was everything before you. I just forgot for a while. As the officers led Ethan away, Vanessa made one last attempt. The children, she pleaded. Think about what this will do to them. I looked at Oliver and Chloe, huddled together on the stairs. I am thinking about them. They deserve to see that actions have consequences, even for family. Especially for family, Harold added, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. One by one, they left, Ethan in handcuffs, Vanessa clutching her children, Geraldine leaning heavily on Harold's arm. The house fell silent, empty of everything except truth. My phone buzzed with a text from Lila. Need company? I looked around at my reclaimed space, the walls that had witnessed my strongest and weakest moments, the furniture that held memories both bitter and sweet, the windows that would now let in light without shadows. Not tonight, I typed back. For the first time in years, I know exactly where I belong. I sat at my grandmother's desk, running my fingers over the worn wood, and began to write, not about revenge or justice, but about reclaiming yourself when the world tries to write your story for you. Sighed, I heard Ethan's voice one last time, calling my name from the police car. I didn't answer. Some chapters need to end for others to begin. 6 months later, I sat across from Ethan in a sterile conference room, watching him sign the final divorce papers. He looked smaller somehow, his designer suit hanging loose on his frame, his charm dulled by reality. I never meant for it to go this far, he said, pushing the papers toward me. I know. And I did know. That was the tragedy of it all. He destroyed our marriage trying to build his perfect family, never realizing what he already had. Outside the lawyer's office, Harold waited on a bench. We'd maintained a careful friendship these past months, meeting for coffee occasionally, both of us trying to understand how family could go so wrong. Vanessa's moving to Seattle, he said as I approached. Fresh start, she says. Kids are adjusting. I thought of Oliver and Chloe, caught in their mother's web of manipulation. They'll figure it out eventually. Kids usually do. Like you did. He smiled sadly. Geraldine still won't admit she was wrong. She visits Ethan every week, tells him he's the victim in all this. And you. I'm selling the house, he said quietly. Too many ghosts? I nodded, understanding completely. My own home had needed months of cleansing, not just physically removing their traces, but emotionally reclaiming each space. My office was mine again, filled with books and manuscripts. Kitchen hummed with my grandmother's old recipes instead of Geraldine's judgments. My phone buzzed, a text from Lila about our weekend plans. Life had settled into a new rhythm, one that felt more authentic than anything I'd known in years. There's something else, Harold said, reaching into his jacket. We found this while packing up the old house. It was hidden in Geraldine's things. He handed me a weathered envelope, my grandmother's distinctive handwriting on the front. For Rachel, when the storm passes. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter dated just weeks before she died, and a small key I recognized from my childhood. My dearest Rachel, the letter began. If you're reading this, you've weathered a storm I always feared would come. I've watched you build your life with such care, but I've also seen the shadows gathering, people who mistake possession for love, control for family. Key, she explained, opened a safety deposit box at her old bank. Inside was everything she'd wanted to protect for me, family photos, legal documents, and a trust fund I'd never known about. Because sometimes, she wrote, the strongest walls aren't the ones we build around our homes, but the ones we build around our hearts. And sometimes, dear one, those walls need to come down for us to truly live. Harold touched my shoulder gently. She knew, didn't she? Even then. She always knew, I whispered, folding the letter carefully. As I drove home, I passed the coffee shop where Ethan and I had first met. The memory didn't sting anymore. It was just another chapter in a story that had taught me more about strength than weakness. At home, I made tea in my grandmother's old pot and sat at her writing desk. The house creaked and settled around me, comfortable in its solitude. On my laptop, the cursor blinked at the top of a blank document. I'd been trying to write about what happened, but every attempt felt incomplete. How do you capture the moment you realize family isn't always about blood? How do you explain that sometimes revenge isn't about destroying others, but about saving yourself? My phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. A photo of Oliver and Chloe, smiling in front of a Welcome to Seattle sign. No words, just the image. I saved it, understanding the message beneath. Some bonds survive even when families break. I turned back to my laptop and began to write, not about betrayal or revenge, but about reconstruction. About how sometimes you have to let your world fall apart to build something truer from the pieces. Sighed, the sun set on another quiet evening, painting my walls with colors that belonged only to me.